This is your 60-second notice that we're about to start class. Also, I'm hoping to waste less time with our survey. So if you haven't done it yet, do it now so I don't have to tap dance when class gets started. When I was in middle school, I was part of the choir, and everyone in the choir had to audition for the district performance, and we were given the advice before we did the audition that you never start out apologizing. You never start out by going, okay, this probably would have been better if I practiced more, because you're setting the expectations, right? And so that should hold true for class, but I've got to tell you that today is one of those days where I'm fighting off a little bit of a headache. My clothes don't fit right today. I don't know why. I've worn this forever. This is the one, if you will remember or think back, we were supposed to have 5 weeks in Sunday, and I built this series thinking that we would have 5 weeks, and then the classroom, the building wasn't quite ready on July 1st or June 1st, so we had to compress down to 4, and so today is the day that is kind of lesson 4 and 5 all squinched together. So I'm approaching it with that attitude, but one of the things that I love, Seth is going to say something similar, second service people, that sometimes those of us who should be most on and most enthusiastic are not, but then we hear from y'all and your enthusiasm, your energy, and your dedication, and that makes it all worth it. So that's my roundabout way of saying participate today, because you're getting the very dregs of what I have left in my soul. Thank you for being the few and the proud survivors of Paul's spiritual renewal class. On Monday we had a deacons meeting and I presented the attendance figures for our classes, and I was like, that class over there has grown exponentially every week, and this class has grown exponentially every week. And as a matter of fact, the only class that people are running from in droves is the stupid one in the auditorium. So thank you for hanging on. And the good news is that this is my last week, and that y'all are going to get real teachers next week. Barton Kaiser and Kieran Deborah Prasad will be in here and be talking about the family. They're doing something really, really interesting that I don't fully understand, but it's going to be awesome, I'll promise you that, of kind of looking at ancient family structures and the ways in which that kind of impacts what Paul and the other New Testament writers wrote about the family, what that looks like today. So I think it's going to be really impactful and a good time. So please be here next week for that class. There will also be other classes that are starting up. So thank you so much again for being here, and we're just going to launch into it. I'm not going to guilt you anymore about the survey. Whoever's going to participate is going to participate. So in our last lesson, and just in the way of review, what we have talked about so far is we came up with a good working definition of what spiritual renewal is. It is the process by which God works in our heart to bring us closer to Him. We talked about the ways that happened in community, and that it happened as we reflect upon and dig deeper into God's Word. And today we will see out of Nehemiah 9 and then Nehemiah 10, again, 2 lessons crammed together, that this process of spiritual renewal happens when we reflect upon the goodness of God, His continuing faithfulness in the midst of our faithlessness, and then the tough step, we recommit. We actually go through the process of saying, no longer shall I do this, but now I will be like this. And we will talk about the ways in which that gains power when we do it in a formal way, not just, and Dave Campbell's not in here, I feel really bad. This is one of Dave's pet peeves, but it's one of those, yeah, Chris and I know, others do as well. Oftentimes when we get to this point in the spiritual renewal process, we promise, we say, Lord, I promise I will be a better person. The end. And what that means, I don't know. And when you don't define the terms of what better looks like, then that happens. Then it's very easy for us to just kind of say, I guess I'm doing well enough. So that's kind of what we're going to look at. Before we get too deep into that, though, I love this question. What is a memory that you return to again and again, that you kind of relive, particularly if it's maybe one of comfort during challenging times, or anything else? What's a memory that you come back to again and again?
Making Thanksgiving dinner with my grandmother.
Ooh, why is that a good memory?
She loved to cook, and I largely learned to cook from her. And that time was always a really good time with family.
I love that. Yeah, how many of you, will kind of mirror this, either have or were children, just seeing if y'all are paying attention, and have that memory with a grandparent that maybe if you were like Paul, more like Paul and less like Jennifer, you didn't at the time feel it as a positive thing. You were kind of dragged in here, come in here and help me cook, and you're like, why? I was watching TV, Alf is on, and y'all are gonna have to wake up. These are the jokes, guys. I'll owe that. But as you grow up, as you mature, as you develop, you realize that that time spent with that family member, while they are handing down to you something that is of value to them, now you have that to draw strength from while they are no longer here. All right, Melinda.
Piggybacking on the grandma thing, the one memory that I think I just keep going back to with my grandma was dumpster diving.
Ooh, okay.
We'd go behind the grocery stores at California and they throw away their bruised fruit. And so I would dive, grandma would take it out, and we'd go back home and make jams and jellies out of all the fruits and stuff that we got out of the.
That's awesome.
So.
And I imagine with that there was some laughter.
Oh yeah,
there was some
definitely.
Time spent well. Awesome. Go ahead, Nicole.
My dad and my mom got divorced when I was like in kindergarten or something, and when I was in first grade, my mom had dropped my brother and I off at my aunt's, and she went out partying for the weekend and forgot to come get us.
Ooh.
And Monday I had this field trip. It was like really my first field trip, and I was super looking forward to it. I called my dad crying and upset that I was going to miss this field trip, and I don't know how the man made it, but he got to my aunt's house, drove me to the school in time for me to get on the bus and go to the field trip. And I'll always remember that because it was one of those pivotal moments that reminded me that just because most of the adults in my life couldn't be counted on didn't mean that they all couldn't. It showed me what it meant to sacrifice because he had to take off work. He had to risk getting a ticket. He gave the teacher money because I didn't have a sack lunch, so he had to give her money so she could buy me lunch. Like all these different things that my dad sacrificed for me in that one moment to give me that one thing that seemed so important to me at the time.
Love that. That you had value, that you mattered to this other person, and that they're going to be there for you when you need them. Love that. Tell this, and if you haven't heard, class is only 45 minutes, so I can't get into this in any great depth. Jennifer came home on Tuesday. She went out with her Heart Moms group, and look, they like to spend time around each other. It's usually a late night when Jennifer gets back after those sorts of days. But she was really late. Like I was in bed. I think she woke me up. And I wanted to give her a hard time. Like, oh my gosh, where have you been? What's going on? She said, sorry, I would have been home sooner, but we got into how we met, how Jennifer and I met. And I was like, say no more. Because that is a epically long story of will they, won't they. I liked her, she had a boyfriend, I gave up, she lost the boyfriend, found out about me, and it could go on and on and on. But that's one of those memories that I really love and cherish and go back to, because for, really one of the few times in my life someone chose me and decided that they wanted to be with me. And so that's one of those things that gives me encouragement and strength, particularly when things are down and I'm feeling a little unlovable. Others. That is, by the way, a super segue, because I imagine this is where all of us are going to go. What's a promise that you've made that you take very seriously? And I've already stolen your marriage vows. I know. You can say it if you want to. Anybody take a sacred vow that they hold on to? Chris?
When I was baptized, I made a promise to God.
Love that. Yeah, that act of baptism, dying to yourself, being born not for yourself, but for the sake of the kingdom and God's purposes. And that is a vow that you take seriously, that we should take seriously as well, that we live now in a very different way because we have been bought by an incredible price. Go ahead, Dan.
Last few years, with my personal life, there's been a lot going on, and with my kids, I have, under the guise of shielding them, I have lied so often to them, and I knew flat out that I was lying to them, and the look in their eyes kind of told me they knew I was lying to them, and in the last 6 months or so, I've kind of made this promise to them that I will not lie to you. I will tell you the truth as much as I can. If there's something that I can't tell you, for whatever reason, I will tell you that I can't tell you that right now, or you need to go talk to so-and-so and ask them. But if I can tell you something, I am going to tell you the truth. And it has caused me to have to sit down with them and tell them some things that I really didn't want to, but I have to keep that promise. I have to go above and beyond.
I love that. Yeah. So that an oath to your children that you will be a person that they can trust, that they will get the truth from you. Love that. Cool.
When we started our discipleship group, we had to make a lot of promises.
Yeah.
And I took all of those very seriously, from being here every week to, what happens in D group stays in D group, and, all these different things. I take it very seriously.
I love that. I'm going to tell on Jennifer. She's here. She can defend herself. I was asked to join a discipleship group before Jennifer was. And so I was given the secret handshake, sworn, given all the things. And so I'm trying to explain to Jennifer. And one of them, discipleship groups are an incredible thing. Go find one. If you can't find one, join one, make one, do it. It's a good thing. It's helpful. But one of them is this insistence that you're here every week. I don't even do that with my small group, and I like all the people in my small group.
And on time.
But we take that seriously, I was like week 3, and I was like, hey guys, I've got something going on Saturday, sorry I can't make it. And they're like, well then it'll be Friday. I'm like, what? Well, we're gonna move heaven and earth to make sure that everybody is there every day. We're a little iffy on the on time because of who we have in our group. But yeah, that you take those serious, you take your connections to your sisters in Christ seriously, because that is how those meaningful bonds of real transformation and change happen.
It seems almost petty in a way, but it becomes like this thing that you can count on, and then you realize, like, if I can count on them on this, I can count on them on other things. It just becomes like the foundation of your trust, that I trust you're going to be here each week.
I love that. Yeah. Anyone else have a sacred vow that they live by? Go ahead, Helen.
Most people don't know this. I have a temper, and it can get very ugly. So about, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago, Doris has been in prayer with me on this one, but I told the kids, I am going to do my utmost best at all times not to raise my voice, not to scream and yell, and address things calmly. And for the last year and a half or so, I have done very, now I slip. You know, there are times when they push me to that very limit where, you know, they're very lucky that all I'm doing is yelling. But those of you who are parents know that. But I have kept that promise to them. And Damien will even come up to me. Abby doesn't talk to me about anything, you know, she has to. She's 15. But Damien's come up to me and he says, Mom, I've really noticed the difference. He said, it's a lot less stressful in here some days. He said, not every day. Some days. So, you know, but I've kept that promise not only to them, but to God, trying to raise them. I'm not going to even claim to try gentle parenting.
Right.
I'm not even going to go there. But a gentler parenting with them.
Love that.
And so,
One, you are not alone. And I
right.
feel like some of the nervous laughter was proof of that. I've also struggled with my temper and anger as well. And that is one of those real commitments that it takes, like a force of that. Nope, I'm not going to lose my temper about this. I really want to, but I'm not going to. And I think that's important. But secondly, you said something really, really important, and I appreciate it. And I feel like the awkward silence has a whole lot to do with it, because I said, what is a sacred vow that you hold very close? And I feel like there are a bunch of you that had something in your head, and then you're like, but last Tuesday, I messed up 3 weeks ago, and so I can't possibly have taken that vow, that promise that seriously if I slipped once. Y'all agree with that? No. The seriousness with which you take the promises that you make does not mean that you are perfect in every moment. It means that when you slip, you recognize the slip, and you go back and you get the strength from God to start again. I feel like I say this weekly. Back when Jennifer and I were losing weight, and I know that I've lost all the rights to talk about that as a pivotal moment in my life. Stupid COVID. I don't know if you've ever tried to lose weight. It's hard. You're going to have slips. There's going to be times where you're like 3 sheets of Oreos in and you're like, diet! Ah! The key was that raising your head and hallelujah! That
You just reminded me of something. So, going along those lines, that's going through what I went through for over 15 months, and I made a lot of promises during those really hard moments. And one of the big ones was that, like a vice, anything that you feel that, I put way too much that into first.
Yeah.
And that's a show, or, I can't miss it. I can't miss it. I've gotten past the recording thing or anything because, I decided that, if I want something that bad, go ahead and read a book in the Bible, or,
Love that.
chapters even, and just get some of that in you and let it pass the vices or the, because I think we do that. I think we put more importance into, and that's anybody.
Absolutely, and anything. I think you're absolutely right. But okay, this is not in the lesson plan, but I think it is of value. Stop right now. I want you to complete the sentence in your head. Don't do it out loud. That could be really weird. The one thing in my life outside of my faith and my family that I can't live without, that I couldn't let go of is... You got it? Yeah. And each and every one of us, and effectively what you are saying, this is my guilt trip for the day, is I am going to give over lordship of my life to Jesus. He can have every secret thing that I worship that isn't him, except.
Wait, what if I finish the my small group house.
Yes. And that's where I almost tripped up, because I'll tell you, like, hey, this is my last Sunday with y'all. I can upset you. I shouldn't have said, but my family. Because if the one thing that I couldn't live without, that I can't see tomorrow without, is Jennifer, Jennifer's become the idol in my life. She's become the part of my life that I'm unwilling to surrender to God. And that's destructive. That's dangerous. That pulls us away.
Ouch.
I know. It hurts me too. I mean, have you seen her? But that's the point. That there's so much in our life that, like, I'm going to surrender all of this, but certainly God doesn't have a strong opinion about me watching this show, or the way I spend my money, or, you know, those sorts of things, and they get in the way of our relationship with God. Totally off track, but I think that was worth saying. All right, so let's go to Nehemiah. And I'll give you in the way of background. We have gone through Nehemiah 8. I'm just going to die. Hold on. We've gone through Nehemiah 8, the reading of the word. Everyone hears it. Their hearts are pierced. They are transformed. They are instructed not to weep but rejoice, because the act of spiritual renewal has begun. And then we get to Nehemiah 9. And you're going to see I'm not going to read it all, because it's long and it's repetitive for a reason, because in Nehemiah 9 they gather together and they recount the history of the Jewish people. You're going to see all the hits here. You're going to see the plagues. You're going to see the Red Sea. You're going to see the conquering of the land. You're going to see all of the kings that have messed things up, all the way to the captivity, and then here we are at the return of the people. But there are 4 verses, which people are getting smarter. There are fewer of y'all over here, which means your odds are greater. Would y'all please look at 9:15 through 17? Here, y'all got 9:25 through 27. This section, I want y'all to look at 9:30 through 31. And then over here, my largest group has the shortest passage. I messed that one up. 9, verse 33. I'm going to give you, let's say, 3 minutes. What does the passage say? What's happening in the passage? And what does it have to do with spiritual renewal? All right, take a couple seconds. You look at your verses. What is happening in that short passage? What does it have to do with spiritual renewal? All right, we're going to do this a little bit different, because this is one of those where hopefully we all came to the same answer regardless of the verse. Just read the verses to me. Just read the words. Anybody want to grab 9, 15, 7 through 17? Thank you.
You gave them bread from heaven when they were hungry, and water from the rock when they were thirsty. You commanded them to go and take possession of the land you had sworn to give them. But our ancestors were proud and stubborn, and they paid no attention to your commands. They refused to obey and did not remember the miracles you had done for them. Instead, they became stubborn and appointed a leader to take them back to their slavery in Egypt. But you are a God of forgiveness, gracious and merciful, slow to become angry and rich in unfailing love. You did not abandon them.
Beautiful. All right. God, you gave them manna from heaven and gave them this land to conquer. What were the Israelites' response? Thank you, but no thank you. We've got this. We're going to go back to slavery. Surely that was better than actually working for a living. But God, you are faithful. You have not abandoned us. All right, over here, who's got 25 through 27? Thank you, Daniel.
And they captured fortified cities and a rich land, and took possessions of houses full of good things, cisterns already hewn, vineyards, olive orchards, and fruit trees in abundance. So they ate and were filled, and became fat, and delighted themselves in your great goodness. Nevertheless, they were disobedient and rebelled against you, and cast your law behind their back, and killed your prophets, who had warned them in order to turn them back to you, and they committed great blasphemies. Therefore you gave them into the hands of their enemies, who made them suffer, and in the time of their suffering they cried out to you, and you heard them from heaven. And according to your great mercies you gave them saviors who saved them from the hands of their enemies.
Beautiful. You, through the conquering of the land, he gave you a good place, he gave you a good land, you benefited from it, you got fat and lazy and said, look at all the good things I've done, not God. Because of that, there was some punishment. When the punishment happened, what did you do? You said, hey, God, save us. And did he go after what you did? No. He, in his great mercy, has saved us. Ray?
Many years you bore with them and warned them by your Spirit through your prophets, yet they would not give ear. Therefore you gave them into the hand of the people of the lands. Nevertheless, in your great mercy you did not make an end of them or forsake them, for you are gracious and merciful God.
Lovely. So again, blessings, warnings, get back on track. They ignored the word of God. God put them into captivity, but God is faithful and brings them back. 9:33.
Yet you have been righteous in all that has come upon us, for you have dealt faithfully, and we have acted wickedly.
You have acted faithfully, we have acted wickedly. There is kind of the theme of all of these four chapters, and honestly, the entirety of Nehemiah 9 resounds that message again and again through the history of the Israelite people, God's faithfulness in the midst of the Israelites' faithlessness. Luckily, we don't have to worry about that today. Again, these are the jokes, people. Do we see ourselves in these stories? Does God give us good things? And once we have those good things, we forget where those good things came from, feel like we can depend upon our own goodness, our own things, and then when life falls apart, then in the darkest moments, we have this sort of moment of clarity. Hey, maybe I don't have this all together. Maybe I should turn to a God that loves me. And even though all of the pain, all of the hurt, all of the trouble we are in is our own doing, he is quick and faithful to redeem us, to save us, to bring us back to himself. What does that have to do with spiritual renewal? What does that have to do with the stuff we've been talking about the last 3 weeks?
I think there's, like the renewal part comes in the fact that they acknowledge, or first off they're aware, and then they acknowledge that God is faithful and we were wicked.
Love that. How many of you, in any situation, when you are asked to explain why things went wrong, your first answer is, well, those people if my boss hadn't just, if that wife of mine had just kept her mouth, whatever it is, I'm learning to self-edit, that when we think about why am I in this situation, it is nearly impossible for us to objectively self-evaluate and go, ooh, if I had just turned right instead of left there, life would be better. But instead we find blame on others. So renewal happens when we recognize our own sinfulness. We are the cause of our problem. God is not punishing us more than we deserve, certainly. Maybe not at all. Maybe this is just natural consequences for the choices we've made. And when we can say to ourselves, I have messed up, I am incapable of bringing myself back into relationship with God, God, act now. Bring me back. What were you going to say, Ray? Or have I gone past it?
He's there.
Yeah.
Jesus, parable of the father standing in the road.
Yeah.
Prodigal son returned home.
While he was a long way off, God saw him, the father saw him and went running to reconcile with his son. What were you going to say?
This gives us hope because God never writes us off.
Love that.
We meet people in our lives that hurt us and do things to us, and we're like, I'm never going to have anything to do with you again. And regardless of how many times the people turn away from God, He never broke them off.
Love that.
Paul?
Yes.
In the story of the prodigal son, I read recently that the reason the father went running to him was because back in those times, when you did something like what the prodigal son did, the town excommunicates you, so to speak. And so if they see you coming back to try to return to your family, the town goes out and stops you from returning to your family, knowing that the family will be too weak and not, they'll let you back in. And so the father was running to meet the son before anybody else could get to him. And I think that speaks volumes for what God does and for the fact that when we are trying to come back, there are going to be things that are trying to stop us, but God is running to meet us before those things get to us if we will just open our arms and receive Him.
And I love that because I think that that's exactly the heart of this. What is the number one thing that keeps us from engaging in spiritual renewal, in seeking a reconciliation with God? Our own judgment. Particularly if this is the 3rd or 5th or 35th time that we have cried those tears and swore to do better, and this time I'm serious, but somewhere in the back of your head you hear you were serious last time too. You're gonna fall again, you're gonna mess up again. This is theater. This is drama, this is play acting. You're not serious. If you were serious, then it would feel different than the other times, right? And what's the message? If it is the 3rd or the 5th, or the 35th or the 350th, God runs every time. He seeks you every time. You are forgiven every time. And so this sense of, oh, this time I better get it right, I'm running out of chances. That's our own sin. It is our own weakness. It is Satan speaking into our lives, saying you shouldn't even try because you're going to mess it up. Where God says you should do it because you're going to mess up and you'll need to do it again, and I'm still here. Go ahead.
Well, I think what all is being said is leading me to think spiritual renewal is not an event, it's a process.
Ooh. I love that. That spiritual renewal is not this moment in time, like baptism. It's once for all, right? Been having this conversation a lot this weekend that our tradition, our history has a bad habit of getting people all the way up to the baptistry, getting them wet, and then being like, point for Shawnee Trail, yay! Who cares what happens to you? We have to move on to the next person. And what happens in real spiritual growth and renewal is that baptism is not the end, it's beginning, right? Like now that you're fresh and new, let's talk about what it means to grow in the kingdom. And I think the same thing happens individually. That I'm going to say that sinner's prayer one more time, God will forgive, and then I move on like nothing has happened, and it's all straight up. And again, weight loss stuff, that's not how it happened for us when it happened. Like it was a lot of, this was not a good day. Things were stressful at work, and so I went and got 2 Big Macs on the way home. The key is to not say, therefore I am no longer loved, therefore the diet's off. It's, tomorrow's going to need to be better. Let's be more focused tomorrow. See that trap where it was and address it. All right, go ahead.
I think as God's people, we need to be like the Father, running to meet those that are coming back. You know, sometimes we don't. We hold back, waiting to see what's going to happen, afraid to give that trust again. And so we're not running to them and wrapping our arms around them and holding them up when they need it.
You realize I've only got today left. This is 6 more weeks. You're right, because we can talk about what God does. What does his body do? Should we not have the eyes? Should we not have the hands? Should we not have the feet of Christ? And then if we see and know in our hearts that when the sinner turns around, God runs, how much less can his church do but to be quick to embrace those who seek God? Let's be him in his hands and his body. All right. 9 minutes to get through my second whole class. In chapter 10, things get real. And I really want to talk about this because this is the part that you're going to want to give lip service to. This feels goofy. I told y'all, those of you who were here, I talked with my good friend ChatGPT about this class early on, and it said, pass out index cards and make people write their sin on the index card, and then they're going to rip it up in a ceremonial, I am free from this sin. And I thought, that's stupid. I'm not going to make y'all do that, number one. I didn't know how many of y'all were going to be here. Index cards are on the rise. Everything's more expensive nowadays. So I didn't do that. But this is where I want you to concretize it. Because if I say my goal is to be healthier, my goal is to lose weight, what does that mean? What are the steps? What does it look like? What activities are going to result in that? And I don't know. I'm gonna be healthier, which is real code for I'm not going to change much of anything at all. And real spiritual renewal should look different. Your life should be lived in a different way. And so in Nehemiah 10:28 through 32, and really this whole chapter, the people gather together, and I'm going to read verse 1, although it's not there. Upon the sealed document are the names of all these people that I'm not going to read because they're weird names. But what did you hear there? There is a document sealed. Do you get the sense that they're taking this seriously? It's a legal document. This is something that is very real, not just, gosh, wouldn't it be better if? And so now let's skip down to verse 28. What I want you to see is, what do you see as important characteristics of a renewal covenant from this passage? So, the rest of the people, the priests, the Levites, the gatekeepers, the singers, the temple servants, and all who have separated themselves from the people of the lands to adhere to the law of God, their wives, their sons, their daughters, all who have knowledge and understanding, join with their kin, their nobles, and enter into a curse and an oath to walk in God's law, which was given by Moses, the servant of God, and to observe and do all the commandments of the Lord our God, and his ordinances and his statutes. We will not give our daughters to the people of the land, or take their daughters for our sons. And it continues on with a long laundry list of very specific things that we will or will not do, which is one of the answers that I'm looking for if you're trying to guess what's in Paul's head. If you're going to covenant with God, if you are going to do something that says, I acknowledge that I need to be renewed, what sorts of things do you see in this passage?
Joining together.
You get specific.
Love that. Say it again louder.
You get specific. It's not generalities of, I'm going to diet better. No, what am I going to do?
Yes.
I'm going to eat salads. I'm going to eat more protein. It's good for me. I'm going to do away with the sugar.
Love this. I was in my D group yesterday, and one of us really kind of hit it on the head. How many of y'all, even when you're praying individually between you and God, you don't want to name the sin? Because that makes it real. Lord, forgive me of that thing I did last Tuesday. He knows what it was, but there's something that makes it very real when you say, Lord, I am really struggling with lust, with hatred, with prejudice, whatever it is, but you naming it makes it real. And so when we're making a covenant to God, it's not just, Lord, I'll try a little bit harder this time. It's, God, I've got to give this up. This has become an idol in my life. I'm not going to do that anymore. And honestly, what that should look more like is, Lord, give me your spirit and your strength to keep me from doing those things anymore, because the heart and soul of spiritual renewal is I'm not good enough by myself.
Oh, and give me people to help me give me that thing.
Yeah, I included it very specifically going up in 28, because who signed this? Everybody. The whole community is involved in this. I shared with you that I had this wrong in my head when I said I was going to do a spiritual renewal. I forget if I actually told y'all how we decided on this being our first topic back. Was I looked over at Jennifer and I was like, what do you think I should teach about? She was like, spiritual renewal. I was like, okay. And then I started studying to see if I had any qualifications to talk about this, which again, backwards. But when I put this together, I had like 3 weeks of what I was going to do in my own house, in my own life individually, and then maybe there'd be a little bit about the community. And that's not how spiritual renewal happens. Renewal happens in the midst of God's people. And so when I covenant, maybe that's my deep group. Maybe it's my small group. Maybe it's Jennifer. Maybe it's other people, though. My spiritual life is not my life. It is the life of this body and the life of the people that I surround myself with. And those things are going to be much more impactful and powerful when we seek one another's encouragement, guidance, admonition, correction, which is something that we really struggle with, because who are you to tell me I'm doing things wrong, even though I know I'm doing things wrong? We need all of those from one another. Other thoughts? All right. So I've talked to you about two things today. I've got 3-ish minutes to talk about this. One aspect is renewing what God, or reviewing what God has done in your life. God, you have constantly been faithful, even in the midst of my faithlessness. You return my faithlessness with your faithfulness. And the second is this commitment. God, alongside you, I vow that I will be different. I will change these aspects of my life so that the barriers that are between me and you go away. Does the order matter there? If so, why? If not, why not? I hear a yes very quietly without a raised hand because they don't want to follow up. There we go.
Yes, it matters, because God wants both sides of that covenant, because he knows we're going to fail. And he knows he'll be faithful when we do, and that he'll give us another opportunity.
Love that. God is, I love the way you say, on both sides of that covenant. God is on both sides of it. God, you have done this. Therefore, come beside me and through me do this so that I can draw closer to you. It's a covenant between God and God. And we're just kind of the property upon which it happens. I love that.
And I think it's reviewing what God has done for us, because otherwise, what's the motivation?
Yeah.
Why? Why do you want to commit to someone if you don't feel like they hold up their end of the commitment and or have proven themselves?
Love that. No time to tell the whole story. Jennifer and I on Friday watched 1965 classic James Stewart movie Shenandoah. Blanket Stairs. Okay, I'll have to give more of that story. If you haven't seen it, it's a great movie. You should watch it. But basically, there is this opening scene where Jimmy Stewart, surrounded by his family, sits down to pray over the meal, and the prayer basically goes, God, we worked this land, we brought the crops out of this land, we turned the crops into food, we cooked the food, none of this would be here if it weren't for our efforts, but we thank you nonetheless, amen. And if that's our attitude, if we are in the midst of God has deserted me, God is far from me, God doesn't love me, what's the commitment that we're making? We're just, Lord, I guess, so y'all don't send me to hell, I guess I'll be the person you want me to be. That's not long lasting. That's not going to be real impactful or changeful in our life. It is only when we acknowledge that, God, you gave me the breath in my lungs to pull the food out of the ground. You gave us the blessings that we could turn that grain into food. You were there and made sure that we didn't burn the house to the ground as we were cooking it. You, Lord, are responsible at this. Thank you. Let me be more close to you. That you've got to have that understanding of God's working before it's even worth making a covenant to him, before it's even swearing allegiance to him. Why would you swear allegiance to a powerless, merciless, self-serving God? Understanding who he is and how he has been faithful even in the midst of our challenging times is at the heart of the commitment we're going to make. All right, people are looking at their watches. Man, I'm boring y'all to death. All right. This is the big point that I wanted to make, which is why I'm going to leave it for 10 seconds. Everything I made you read in Nehemiah 9 tells you that in the midst of your spiritual renewal, in the midst of saying, God, I promise I'll be better, whatever that looks like, whatever the right words are, you're going to fail again. You're going to mess up. This is only 350. You've got another 12 before you're on the other side and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Why make the commitment at all? You're going to mess up. Why? Why recommit? Why renew?
Focus.
Ooh, talk to me more.
If you don't have that focus, it's definitely not going to happen.
Right? I keep talking about it. Jennifer and I'll say we did really, really well with losing weight until COVID. And then, as happened for most of us, when I was working from home and not getting up and getting ready and going off to work every day, routine slipped. I did not ever at any point actively say, I don't care about the diet anymore, hand the Oreos over. But instead, I was at routine, I kind of living life, just going from day to day, If there were a few more trips to the pantry, at least that was exercise, right? I wasn't getting any other exercise, and I wasn't, Dave Ramsey uses the phrase, with gazelle-like intensity. I had lost the gazelle-like intensity about losing weight. I just assumed it would kind of maintain itself while I live life. And guess what happened? Well, y'all can see what happened. It didn't work. That when we make these recommitments, when we say, I recognize that I'm here and I want to be here, at least you're moving in the right direction, right? And then maybe it does this a couple of times, but when we have that focus of this is who I am, I'm going to aim in that direction. It's on a straight line. Go ahead, Jerry.
If you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time.
Love that. If you aim at nothing, you're going to hit it every time. Go ahead, Dan.
Another thing to say is, as far as the recommitment goes, it's not just our failures that we need to recommit.
Ooh.
Oftentimes, you have a goal and you start heading towards that goal. And even with weight loss, you hit those plateaus where it's like, okay, I lost 30 pounds, and then it's like you stop losing weight,
Mm-hmm.
It's, your body, your mind, you get to a point where what you thought you were going to do, you kind of sidetrack a little bit. You're not necessarily failing, but you're no longer making that progress.
Yeah.
And sometimes there just needs to be that little bit of recommitment to say, I need to take another big step forward and get going back where I was going.
That's the church way of saying sometimes we need the kick in the butt to go in the right direction. Again, I love that. More than anything else, because I got 10 seconds, sorry, I'm cutting conversation short. We need this commitment because when we fail, what is God going to do? Accept us, love us, bring us back. And sometimes that's what we need. We need the acceptance of God. We need to know that even in the midst of our sin, He is not far from us. He is pulling us towards Himself. That acceptance and that forgiveness is powerful, and we need it lived out in our lives again and again and again. And so we recommit so that when we fail, we find God faithful. And if I had 20 more minutes, we would talk about it, but I don't. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, next week you'll have Barton and Kieran, and they're going to do much better work than I did. So I look forward to seeing you here next week.